I used to lock my bedroom door every night because of my brother, not because he was dangerous or anything like that. He was just the kind of person who thought boundaries were funny. If I was asleep, he'd come in and turn my chair around so it faced the corner, or he'd stand silently by my bed until I opened my eyes and nearly had a heart attack. One time, he slid his phone under my door and played scratching noises through the speaker for 15 straight minutes. So when I moved back home after college for a few months, I bought a new lock for my bedroom door before I unpacked anything else. It wasn't some cheap privacy lock either. It was a solid brass keyed doorknob with a dead latch. Once that thing clicked shut, nobody was getting in unless they had the key or kicked the door off the frame. I kept one key on my car ring and the spare in a little tin box in my dresser drawer. That's why what happened still bothers me years later, because I know exactly what kind of lock it was, and I know exactly how impossible the first night should have been. It was late October, and my parents' house always felt different that time of year, colder in ways the thermostat never fixed. The hallway outside the bedrooms held onto darkness, even in daylight, because the one window at the end faced the side yard and a row of overgrown hedges. At night, the hall became this long black tunnel with 4 closed doors on either side. Mine was the last one on the left. The first week back was normal. My mom worked early. My dad stayed up late watching old crime shows downstairs. My brother, Nate, lived 2 towns over by then. So the house was quieter than I remembered. Quiet enough that every sound carried. If my father cleared his throat in the kitchen, I heard it through the vent. If the refrigerator compressor kicked on, I heard the hum under my pillow. If someone walked down the hallway, I knew exactly where they were from the floor creaks. On the 8th night, I locked my door around midnight and went to bed after gaming for a couple hours. I remember checking it with my hand, twisting the knob just to be sure. Locked. I turned off the lamp, scrolled on my phone for maybe 10 minutes, then fell asleep. I woke to the sound of the knob turning, not rattling, not someone testing it, turning, slowly. I opened my eyes to that half-awake confusion where you haven't fully caught up with your surroundings yet, and for a second, all I could make out was the narrow line of hallway light under my door. Then the knob made that soft mechanical click a door makes when the latch retracts. My stomach dropped. The door opened about 3 inches, just enough for the darkness of the hallway to widen into my room. I sat up so fast, the blanket twisted around my legs. "Dad?" The door stopped moving. Nothing answered. I reached over and snapped on my lamp. The door was open maybe 5 inches now. Nobody stood in the gap. There was just the empty hallway beyond it, dim and flat and silent. I got out of bed and pulled the door all the way open. No one there. My parents' bedroom door was closed across the hall. The bathroom door was open, light off. The house was dead quiet. I checked the lock first. I twisted the knob, pressed the latch, examined the strike plate. Nothing looked damaged. I shut the door again, locked it, and tested it 3 times. Still worked perfectly. I stood there for a full minute with my hand on the knob, waiting for some explanation to arrive. Maybe I'd forgotten to lock it. Maybe the latch hadn't caught. Maybe I dreamed the whole thing. Then I noticed something I know I hadn't imagined. My key was in the lock. Not on the inside. On the outside. I was staring at it through the keyhole slot, the metal just visible where it protruded from the hall side. For a second, I couldn't process what I was looking at. Then I unlocked the door, opened it, and there it was. My spare key, hanging from the outer side of the knob. I took it out and just stood there holding it. I had not put it there. I knew exactly where that spare had been, because I'd put it in the tin box with some old foreign coins and a guitar pick I didn't want to lose. I even went to check. The tin box in my dresser drawer was open. The coins were scattered. The key's little paper label, the one from the hardware store, was lying beside the box like someone had peeled it off. I barely slept the rest of the night. I kept telling myself my mom must have gone into my room earlier to put away laundry or something and found the box open, maybe absent-mindedly taken the key out. But even then, why would she use it at 2 in the morning? Why open my door and not say anything? At breakfast, I asked her. She looked at me like I was joking. She hadn't even been upstairs after 9. My dad swore he'd been on the couch until he went to bed, and he didn't come up until after 1. Neither of them had touched my dresser, and both of them got annoyed pretty fast when I kept pressing. Then my dad asked, "You sure Nate doesn't still have a copy?" I called Nate right there. He laughed and said no, and when I described the door opening, he went quiet for a second before saying, maybe I was sleepwalking again. I hadn't sleepwalked since I was a kid. That would have been a comforting answer if not for one thing. When I was little and used to sleepwalk, my mother would always find me in the hallway outside my room. Never inside anyone else's room, never downstairs, just standing outside my own locked bedroom door like I'd been trying to get back in. I didn't remember that until after the call. That night, I moved a chair under the knob, not because I thought it would stop someone with a key. I just wanted noise if the door moved again. I also put the spare key in my car and checked my pocket twice before bed. At 1:13 a.m., according to the time glowing on my phone, I heard 3 soft knocks on my bedroom door. Not loud, not urgent, just polite little taps like someone trying not to wake the rest of the house. I froze. Another 3 knocks. Then my mother's voice, low and tired from the other side of the door. "Evan?" Everything in me relaxed at once. "Yeah?" "Open the door." I sat up, confused. "Why?" She didn't answer right away. Then, in the same calm voice, she said, "Open the door." I slid out of bed and started toward it before my brain caught up. My mom had gone to bed hours ago. If she needed me, why was she whispering? And why hadn't she said what she wanted? The chair was still wedged beneath the knob. I stopped with my hand hovering inches from it. "Mom?" Silence. Then 3 knocks again. Exactly the same spacing as before. "Mom, what do you need?" And this is the part I replay the most because I'm sure of it. Absolutely sure. What answered me was my mother's voice, but it came from farther down the hallway now, not right outside my door. It sounded like she was near the stairs. "Open the door." Same volume, same tone, same words. Like whatever had said it the first time hadn't moved by walking. It had just started speaking from somewhere else. I backed away so fast I hit my desk. A second later, from directly outside my door again, came 3 more knocks. I didn't breathe. Then my father started snoring in the room across the hall. I heard it clearly, loud, uneven, unmistakable, which meant my mother was still in bed beside him. Whatever was outside my door knocked one last time. Then it twisted the knob. The chair jolted with a sharp scrape against the floorboards. The knob turned harder, hit the resistance, stopped, then slowly turned back. I spent the rest of the night sitting in the corner with a baseball bat across my lap and every light on. In the morning, the chair was still jammed under the knob exactly where I'd left it, but the door itself had a fresh mark near the latch, like something thin had been worked into the gap and dragged downward. The wood was nicked in 3 vertical scratches. My dad thought I'd made them myself in a panic and not remembered. My mother didn't say much. She just stared at the marks longer than I expected and then asked if I'd heard anything else in the hallway as a child. That question should have made no sense to me, but the way she asked it, careful, almost resigned, made me feel sick before she even explained. She said that when I was 6, I started telling them someone kept trying my bedroom door at night, at the old house, not this one. I'd say I heard gentle knocking, and then my own voice asking to be let in. Not crying, not yelling, just asking. My parents assumed it was a nightmare until one night my father heard it too. He told my mother that around 2 in the morning, he woke up and heard a child's voice in the hallway outside my room saying, very softly, "Dad, open my door." He thought it was me until he looked over and saw me asleep between them because I'd climbed into their bed earlier that night after a bad dream. He opened the bedroom door immediately. The hallway was empty. He checked my room and the window was shut. The closet was shut and there was nobody inside. After that, according to my mom, it stopped. Or at least, they never talked about it again. I asked her why she had waited this long to tell me. She said because we moved, and she thought whatever it was had stayed there. That answer didn't help me much, considering it was apparently standing outside my current bedroom door. I almost got a hotel that night. I should have. Instead, I convinced myself that knowing about it had somehow made me more dramatic, more suggestible. I told myself there had to be an explanation rooted in memory and stress and coincidence. So I set up my phone to record the door while I slept. I locked the knob, shoved the chair under it again, and put a strip of black tape across the frame so I'd know if the door opened even a fraction. Then I lay there staring at the ceiling until almost 2. Nothing happened. At some point, I drifted off. I woke at 4:07 a.m. because my phone screen had lit up across the room. Not because of a notification, because it was no longer recording. I knew I'd started it. I remembered checking the timer. Now the screen showed the home page and the camera app was closed. My mouth went dry. The chair was still under the knob. The The tape across the frame was unbroken. For one brief, hopeful second, I thought maybe that was it. Maybe I'd imagined everything and just somehow hit stop in my sleep. Then I noticed the bedroom closet door. It was open. Only a little, maybe 4 inches. I never slept with it open because the hinge creaked, and I hated seeing the dark seam between the door and frame at night. I got out of bed and walked toward it very slowly, listening so hard that I could hear the blood in my ears. The air near the closet felt colder than the rest of the room. I grabbed the edge of the door and pulled it wide. Nothing inside except hanging shirts, shoeboxes, an old duffel bag, and the phone charger I'd been looking for 2 days earlier. I almost laughed from relief. Then I looked down. On the closet floor, in the thin layer of dust near the back wall, someone had written 3 words with a fingertip. "Let me out." I stumbled back so hard I hit the bed frame. There are 100 possibilities for how those words could have gotten there, and I've gone through all of them. Me forgetting some dumb joke from years ago. A family member messing with me, dust shifting in a way that looked like letters. But the reason none of those explanations hold is because I had cleaned that closet 2 weekends earlier, swept it out completely. There hadn't been enough dust then to write anything in. I woke my parents. My dad came in angry, then stopped talking the second he saw the closet floor. My mother wouldn't step over the threshold. My father took a rag, wiped the words away without saying anything, and then removed the bedroom door from its hinges before sunrise. Not just the lock, the whole door. He said if there was no locked door, maybe whatever this was would stop fixating on it. That sounds insane, I know. It sounded insane to me too, and by then, I think all of us were too tired to care how insane it sounded. For 2 nights with no bedroom door at all, nothing happened. I slept badly but uninterrupted. No knocking, no voices, no turning knob for obvious reasons. On the 3rd day, my father rehung the door while I was out because he said living like that felt stupid. That night, I stayed awake on purpose with the lamp off and my phone in my hand, watching the rectangle of darkness where the door stood. At 2:26 a.m., the knob began to turn. Very slowly. I didn't move. The chair was under it again. The lock was set. There was no possible way it should have given, but it did. I heard the latch retract. The chair screeched back half an inch. The door pushed inward until it struck the chair and stopped. A thin line of hallway darkness appeared, and through that gap, something on the other side whispered in my own voice, "Please." I couldn't speak. I couldn't even blink. Then, very gently, almost tenderly, whatever was outside the door tapped once against the wood. Not with knuckles, with something harder. Maybe a fingernail. Maybe a key. The next morning, I packed my things and left. My parents sold that house less than a year later, though they gave other reasons. My father died a few years after that, and my mother still refuses to discuss the hallway at either house. Nate thinks the whole thing was some family panic that fed itself until everybody started hearing what they expected to hear. Maybe, but here's the part I've never told him. A month after I moved into my apartment, I was unpacking winter clothes when I found something in the pocket of an old coat I hadn't worn in years. A brass key, small paper labels still attached, the spare from my bedroom lock, which made no sense because that wasn't the key I'd been using at my parents' house. That key was still on my ring. I checked. I was holding 2 identical spare keys in my hand. I remember standing in my kitchen staring at them until my vision blurred. One of them was mine. I have no idea where the other one came from. I threw them both out that night. I changed the locks on my apartment 2 days later and never, ever lock my bedroom door now. Because once, around 3 in the morning in that apartment, long after I'd convinced myself it was all over, I woke to the sound of a key being carefully inserted into a lock that no longer existed. When I was 13, my parents started locking my bedroom door from the outside. They didn't do it every night at first, only after what they called incidents. That's the word they used. Incidents. Like it sounded cleaner than saying what actually happened. It started the summer my grandmother died. She'd lived with us for almost 6 years, in the downstairs guest room because her knees were bad and the stairs hurt too much. Every morning before school, I used to find her in the kitchen in the dark, already dressed, already awake, making tea in complete silence like she didn't want to disturb the house. She was the kind of person who moved quietly enough to make you think you'd imagined seeing her. Small, thin, always wearing slippers that barely made any sound. When she died, the whole house changed its shape somehow. Not physically, obviously. The walls were the same, the rooms were the same, but empty spaces felt more obvious. The downstairs hall seemed longer. The stairs creaked louder at night. The guest room door stayed shut for months, and whenever I passed it, I'd get this weird feeling that someone on the other side had just stopped moving. My parents didn't talk about her much after the funeral. My mother cried privately. My father buried himself in chores and paperwork and practical things. The kind of things men like him think will keep grief from getting in through the cracks. I started having trouble sleeping about 2 weeks later. Not nightmares exactly, more like interrupted sleep. I'd wake up at odd hours with the feeling that I'd just heard someone call my name from very far away. Or I'd sit straight up because I was sure my bedroom door had opened, only to see it still shut. Then came the first incident. I woke up standing in the upstairs hallway at maybe 3 in the morning. At least I think it was 3. I could see the microwave clock downstairs from the landing, and the numbers were bright green. A little after 3 o'clock, I was barefoot, half asleep, and freezing. My bedroom door was open behind me. At the other end of the hall, near the top of the stairs, stood my grandmother. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. My brain tried to force it into something normal. My mother, a shadow, a coat hanging from the banister. But it wasn't any of those. It was her height, her shape, the slope of her shoulders. I could even see the outline of her long nightgown, the pale blue one she used to wear in winter. She stood with one hand on the railing, her head slightly tilted, looking down the stairs toward the dark first floor. I remember whispering, "Nana?" She didn't answer. She just lifted one hand, slowly, without turning around, and crooked one finger like she wanted me to follow her downstairs. Every bit of sleep left my body at once. I backed into my room so fast I hit my desk chair and knocked it over. That crash woke my parents. My father came running up the hall, flicked on the light, and the landing was empty. I started sobbing before I could even explain why. They searched the house anyway. My father checked doors and windows. My mother checked under beds like I was 6. Nobody found anything, and the next morning they told me it was grief, stress, and sleepwalking mixed together. Maybe they were right, except the next night my father found me downstairs. I was standing outside the guest room door in complete darkness, one hand on the knob, the other hanging limp at my side, like I was waiting for someone inside to answer. He said my eyes were open, but when he spoke to me, I didn't respond at all. He had to physically turn me around and walk me upstairs. In the morning, I remembered none of it. That was when they started locking my bedroom door from the outside. It sounds cruel, I know. My mother hated it. I heard them arguing about it one night through the vent, but my father said he'd rather have me angry than wandering around half asleep down near the stairs or trying to go into a room nobody used anymore. So every night after that, once I was in bed, he'd shut my door, turn the little key from the hallway side, and test the knob. I told myself it was temporary. For a while, it even seemed to work. I'd wake in the morning still in bed. No more hallway, no more guest room, no more glimpses of my grandmother by the landing. Then one Friday night in November, I woke up to the sound of someone gently jiggling my doorknob. Not trying to force it, just testing it. Back and forth, back and forth. I checked the clock on my nightstand. 2:41 a.m. The room was completely dark except for the digital numbers and the weak orange streetlight bleeding through the blinds. I held my breath and listened. The knob moved again. Then came 3 soft knocks. Not my father. He knocked with his knuckles, firm and impatient. This was lighter than that, almost polite. I sat up and said, "Mom?" No answer. Another 3 knocks. I got out of bed and crossed the room, but stopped a few feet from the door because something felt wrong immediately. Usually when someone stood outside, you could see a shadow at the gap under the door. There was no shadow, just darkness. Who is it? For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then, very softly, my grandmother's voice said, "Open the door." I can still hear exactly how it sounded. Not raspy, not ghostly, just normal, clear, patient. Like she was asking me to hand her something from a high shelf. Every hair on my arm stood up. I whispered, "No." There was a little pause. Then the knob stopped moving, and the voice on the other side said, a little more firmly this time, "You have to let me in." I stumbled backward until the backs of my knees hit the bed. My grandmother had been dead for nearly 4 months. I started yelling for my parents, loud enough that my throat hurt. My bedroom light snapped on, flooding the room yellow, and within seconds, both of them were outside my door. My father unlocked it and came in looking furious, probably expecting fire or blood or something equally immediate. My mother was behind him in her robe, hair half loose, face pale with sleep. I told them what I heard. My father's expression changed while I was talking. Not into belief exactly, more like recognition. He asked, "Did it sound like your grandmother?" I said yes. He looked over his shoulder at my mother and then said something that bothered me more than hearing the voice itself. He said, "All right." Not, "Are you sure?" Not, "You were dreaming." "All right." As if this was information he could place somewhere. My mother wanted to sleep in my room after that, but my father said no. He sat in the hallway outside my door until morning instead, in a wooden chair from the kitchen. I know because I barely slept and heard him shifting out there every hour or so. Nothing else happened that night. The next day, I pressed them until my mother finally told me what they'd been hiding. Apparently, my grandmother had started sleepwalking near the end of her life. Not often, but enough that my parents knew to watch for it. She'd be found standing in the downstairs hall or near the stairs or outside people's bedrooms, seeming awake until someone spoke to her, and she blinked like she'd been dropped back into her body. But there was one thing that happened only once, maybe twice. And my mother told me this with such obvious reluctance that I knew she regretted saying it the second the words left her mouth. A few weeks before she died, my grandmother had woken my mother by knocking on her bedroom door in the middle of the night. When my mother opened it, my grandmother was standing there in her nightgown, eyes open, smiling faintly. She said, "Don't lock it when she comes." My mother asked who. My grandmother answered, "The girl in the bedroom." Then she walked away before my mother could stop her. We did not have a girl in the house. No cousin staying over, no family friend, no boarder, nobody. My mother told herself it was dementia, confusion, medication, anything. Until the second time. That time my father heard the knocking first. He opened the door and found my grandmother standing in the hall again. Only this time she was staring past him into their room instead of at him. He said she looked terrified. When he asked what was wrong, she whispered she opened it. After that, they started making sure the guest room stayed shut at night. I asked why nobody told me any of this before. My mother said because I was a kid, and they thought it would scare me. She was right about that part. For the next week, I barely slept. Every time the lock clicked from the outside at bedtime, I felt trapped. But I felt more afraid of the door being unlocked than locked. That was the part that messed with me. The thing that was supposed to make me feel safe had started to feel like the only reason I was still okay. Then came the night that made my father stop pretending. It was raining hard. I remember that because the gutters outside my window kept overflowing and making this steady pouring sound that almost covered smaller noises in the house. I'd fallen asleep with my lamp on and woke sometime after 2 to darkness. The lamp was off. That was the first thing. The second thing was that my bedroom door was open about 6 inches. I sat bolt upright. The hallway outside was black. No light from the stairs, no bathroom light. Just a narrow, dark gap where the door should have been shut. I knew my father had locked it. I always listened for the key. Always. I reached for the lamp switch with shaking fingers and turned it on. Light filled the room. The door stayed open. No one stood outside it. I got up so slowly it felt like moving underwater and walked toward the gap. The air near the doorway was colder than the rest of the room. I could hear rain, floor creaks, the hum of the house settling. And then, from downstairs, I heard slippers on hardwood, soft, dragging, slowly crossing the hall below. I ran to my parents' room without even looking over the banister. My father was already awake, sitting up like he'd heard it too. My mother was right behind him. All 3 of us stood at the top of the stairs listening. Step, step, step. Then the guest room door downstairs creaked open. My father went down first with a baseball bat. My mother called after him not to, over and over, but he went anyway. I stayed halfway down the staircase, clinging to the banister so hard my hand cramped. He turned on the hall light. Nothing. The guest room door was open. The room inside was empty. But the bed, my grandmother's old bed, stripped months earlier except for the mattress, had a clear dip in the middle, like someone had just been sitting there. My father checked windows, locks, closets, under the bed. Nothing. Then he crouched near the foot of the mattress and went completely still. "What?" my mother asked. He didn't answer immediately. When he finally stood up, He looked at me and said, "Go upstairs." I didn't move, so my mother came down, saw whatever he was looking at, and pulled me back so hard my shoulder hurt. The next morning, I went into the guest room while they were in the kitchen. At the foot of the mattress, pressed into the thin layer of dust on the wood floor, were wet footprints. Not adult ones, small ones, child-sized. They came from the hallway to the bed, and none went back out. That was when my father screwed a metal slide bolt onto the outside of my bedroom door in addition to the lock. He did it himself that afternoon, jaw clenched, not saying a word. I watched from the hall while he measured and drilled. It made the whole thing feel less like a precaution and more like a fact he had accepted before the rest of us had. Something was getting into the house at night, and for whatever reason, it wanted bedroom doors open. After that, the rules changed. My door got locked and bolted every night. The guest room downstairs stayed shut with a chair under its knob. No one walked the house after midnight alone. If anybody heard knocking, they ignored it. For a little while, that worked too. Then the noises started inside my room. The first time, it was my closet door rattling at maybe 1 in the morning. Not violently, just a tiny repetitive click, like the latch was lifting and falling back into place. I thought maybe a hanger had slipped or the house was settling. I stared at the closet for 10 minutes and eventually the noise stopped. The second time, it was clearer. A knock from inside the closet. 3 times. I pulled the blanket over my head like that could do anything and stayed like that until dawn. In the morning, the closet was empty, except for clothes and boxes and a plastic bin of old toys. The third time, I made the mistake of answering. The knock came from inside the closet again. 3 soft taps. I was sitting up in bed already, heart racing. Before I could stop myself, I said, "What?" A little girl's voice from inside the closet whispered, "Open it." I started screaming so hard my father had trouble with the bolt and lock because his hands were shaking too much. He threw the closet door open with the bat raised. Nothing at all. But on the inside panel of the closet door, at about the height a child might reach, there were 4 thin lines scratched into the paint. Not random lines, letters. OPEN. My mother covered her mouth and sat down right there on my bedroom floor. My father took the door off the closet before sunrise. Then the dresser got dragged in front of it. And for the first time in my life, I saw him afraid. Not angry, not skeptical. Afraid. A week later, we left the house and stayed with my aunt across town. My parents told people there was mold in the walls, which was technically true because my father had suddenly become obsessed with finding practical explanations for impossible things. We never moved back in. The house sold the next spring to a couple with 2 children, a boy and a little girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old. I saw them once from the car when my mother drove past by accident. The girl was in the upstairs front window, looking out through the glass. My old room. My mother made a choking sound and kept driving. For years, I told myself the worst part of that entire time was not knowing what was real. Sleepwalking, grief, suggestion, family fear feeding on itself. All the explanations people reach for when the alternative is admitting a locked door may not actually keep anything out. Then, when I was 21, my father had a stroke. He survived it. But recovery changed him. People get softer sometimes after things like that. Less interested in holding the line. More likely to say what they really think because they're too tired to keep carrying it. One evening, I was helping him sort old papers in the garage when he asked me if I remembered the bolt on my bedroom door. I told him I remembered all of it. He nodded for a long time without speaking. Then he said, "I never locked it that night." I thought he meant the first night I heard my grandmother's voice. I asked which night. He said, "The one in the rain, the one you woke up and found it open." I stared at him. He set down the stack of papers in his lap and said he'd gone to lock my door like always, but when he stepped into the upstairs hallway, he saw my bedroom door already shut and heard what he thought was my voice from inside saying, very calmly, "It's okay, she's here." So he opened the door instead of locking it. He said he only opened it a crack, just enough to see the foot of my bed and the window and the dark shape of someone small standing beside the mattress. "Not you," he said, "someone facing the bed." He shut the door immediately, locked it, and told himself he'd seen a coat hanging from your desk chair, or a trick of shadow, or anything else a sane man could live with. "But then," he said, "I heard your voice from the room ask why I locked it." I couldn't say anything. He looked older in that moment than I had ever seen him. "I heard that," he said, "and you were asleep." I asked him why he never told me. He gave this sad little shrug and said, "Because I was the one who opened it." He died 3 years later. After the funeral, I took my mother home and helped her sort through some boxes from the attic. In one of them were things from my grandmother's room: slippers, scarves, prayer cards, a chipped teacup wrapped in newspaper, and at the very bottom, underneath an old folded blanket, was a child's drawing on yellowed paper. It was done in crayon. Simple, the kind of drawing kids do when the proportions don't matter. A square house, a staircase, a room upstairs with a stick figure standing in the doorway, another smaller figure inside the room, and beneath it, in shaky handwriting that was definitely not a child's, were 5 words written by my grandmother. Don't let her open it. I never found out who the girl in the bedroom was, but I can tell you this. I'm 30 now. I live alone. I've never once slept with my bedroom door unlocked, and every so often, usually in the dead middle of the night, I wake up just before sleep can fully pull me under because I'm sure I heard a polite little knock come from the other side of the door. 3 taps. Always 3. And once, last winter, when I made the mistake of looking too quickly at the gap beneath it, I saw the shadow of 2 bare feet standing perfectly still in the hall. 1 adult, 1 child. My wife and I rented the upstairs of a split-level house for 11 months, and for 10 of those months, I thought the strange part was the old bedroom door. It wasn't the kind with a normal push-button lock. It had one of those small brass keyholes under the knob, like something from a much older house, and the door itself was heavier than any interior bedroom door had a right to be. Solid wood, thick, slightly warped near the bottom. When it shut, it didn't click so much as settle into place with this deep, final sound that always made me glance up. The landlord told us during the walkthrough that the previous owner had never updated the upstairs. He said it like he was apologizing for the old trim and the faded floral wallpaper in the hallway. I didn't care. The place was cheap, clean enough, and close to my job. My wife, Donna, liked the big front window in the bedroom and the fact that the room stayed cooler than the rest of the house. There was only one thing she didn't like: the lock. Not because she thought it was creepy, she just hated having the only key. The landlord had given us exactly 1 brass key for the bedroom door and said that was all he had. Apparently, the original set had been lost years ago. "Why does a bedroom even need a key?" Dana asked after he left. I shrugged and hung it on a little hook beside the closet. That should have been the end of it. At first, the lock was just an annoyance. If one of us accidentally shut the door while the other was inside, whoever had the key had to open it. The old knob stuck sometimes too, so we got into the habit of leaving the bedroom door open unless we were sleeping or changing. Then, around the 2nd month, Dana started closing it at night. She said the hallway bothered her. Not the whole hallway, just the section outside our bedroom. The top of the stairs led to a short landing, then a narrow stretch of hall with the bathroom on one side, a little linen closet on the other, and our room at the very end. There was no window there. At night, it became this long black slot that seemed darker than the rest of the apartment. Dana said she hated waking up and seeing that darkness framed in our doorway. So she'd get in bed, reach over and say, "Can you shut it?" I'd do it. Sometimes I locked it too, mostly because if the door was going to be shut, I liked hearing the latch seat properly. It made the room feel sealed off. That's an important word, I think. Sealed. Because after a while, that bedroom started to feel less like a room and more like a container. The first weird thing happened on a Tuesday night in early November. Dana had fallen asleep with the TV on low. I was half awake, scrolling on my phone when I heard the doorknob turn. Not a rattle, a full, slow turn. I looked over immediately. The door was locked. I knew it was because I'd locked it myself maybe 20 minutes earlier. The key was on the nightstand beside Dana's water glass. The knob turned all the way down, held there for a second, then eased back up. I sat there waiting. Nothing else happened. I got up, crossed the room, and checked the door. Still locked. No one in the hall. Bathroom empty. Entire apartment silent except for the downstairs tenant's muffled TV. When I came back to bed, Dana asked, still half asleep, "What was that?" I told her probably the old latch settling. She nodded like that answer was good enough for her and went back to sleep. It wasn't good enough for me, but I wanted it to be. After that, it started happening once every week or two, always late, always after we were in bed. The knob would turn, pause, and release. Never any knocking, never any footsteps leading up to it. Just the unmistakable sound of someone trying the door from the hall. I blamed the house, old frame, misaligned latch, pressure changes, cheap excuses, but they were all I had. Then one night, the door opened. Only a little, maybe 2 inches, but it was enough. I woke because cold air touched my face. That's the only reason. The room felt different. I opened my eyes and saw the dark shape of the door no longer flush with the frame. The hallway beyond was blacker than the bedroom somehow, and a thin strip of that darkness had entered the room. I sat up and saw the key exactly where I'd left it on the dresser. The door should have been locked. Dana was awake too, propped on one elbow, staring at the gap. "Did you get up?" she whispered. "No." She pointed. "Then why is it open?" I didn't answer because I didn't have one. I turned on the bedside lamp and crossed the room. The knob felt cold, not room temperature cold. Window in winter cold. I pulled the door open wider and looked into the hall. Nothing. No one. Bathroom door shut. Linen closet shut. Top of the stairs empty. I checked the lock and felt stupid immediately because the problem was obvious. The door wasn't locked anymore. That should have been impossible. I remembered turning the key. I remembered hearing the little metal click, but now the key on the dresser sat exactly where it had been all night. Dana started double-checking every evening after that. She'd close the door, watch me lock it, then physically test the knob herself. Locked. Every night. And still, once in a while, we'd wake to find it cracked open. We argued over it more than I like admitting. Not big screaming fights. Small, tired ones. "You forgot." I didn't forget. "You must have." "Then why do you remember testing it too?" Neither of us had a satisfying answer, so we kept living there. It became one of those domestic things that shouldn't become normal, but somehow does, like a faucet with weird water pressure or a stove burner that takes forever to light. Except every few nights, one of us would wake and stare at that open door and feel our heart knocking around in our chest. By January, Dana stopped sleeping well. She said she kept having the same dream. In the dream, she'd wake up and see the bedroom door standing wide open. There'd be someone in the hall just past the bathroom where the darkness was thickest, but she could never make out more than a shape. Not tall, not short, just someone standing there, facing our room. Then the person would say, very politely, "You forgot to lock it." And Dana would wake for real, usually to find the door still shut, sometimes not. I told her she was stressing herself out, that the dream and the stupid lock were feeding each other. She agreed in theory. But she started making me keep the key on my side of the bed because she didn't want to touch it anymore. That lasted until the night she found it under her pillow. We hadn't locked the door that time. That detail matters. We'd come home late from dinner with friends, changed, and collapsed into bed. I remember it clearly because I even joked, "At least the ghost gets easy access tonight." Dana didn't laugh. Around 4 in the morning, she jolted awake and made this sharp sound, not a scream, more like all the air leaving her at once. I sat up, and she threw something across the room hard enough that it hit the wall. It was the key. She had found it under her pillow, not beside it, not tangled in the blanket, under it. She swore she felt something hard under her cheek and reached beneath the pillow, thinking maybe it was an earring or a charging cable. Instead, her fingers closed around the brass key. We turned the light on, stripped the bed, checked the floor, checked the nightstands, checked everything. No explanation made sense. Neither of us had touched the hook by the closet since getting home. The key should have been hanging there. It wasn't. After that, Dana wanted to move. I probably should have agreed right away, but leases and money and pride make people stupid. I told her we'd finish out the rental term and look for somewhere else in the spring. The next few weeks were worse, maybe because now we were paying attention to every little thing. The hallway light started burning out faster than it should have. I'd replace the bulb, and 2 days later, it would flicker and die. The bathroom door would sometimes be standing open in the morning, after we both remembered shutting it. Once I found the bedroom key hanging from the outside of the bedroom lock when I got home from work, gently swaying like someone had just stepped away from it. Dana hadn't come home yet. I stood in that hallway for a full minute staring at it before I touched it. When she walked in 20 minutes later, I asked if she'd come home at lunch and forgotten. She looked genuinely offended. No. Why would I do that? I showed her the key. She went pale in a way I still remember, all the color draining from around her mouth first. That night, she made me call the landlord. He came the next day, looked at the door, the knob, the latch, the frame, everything. He tested it 5 or 6 times and said what every landlord says when they don't have a real answer. Old house. Then, because Dana pushed harder, he admitted something else. The previous owner had used that bedroom as a sick room for his wife near the end of her life. According to the landlord, she'd become confused sometimes and kept locking the bedroom door because she believed someone was trying to come in at night. That information was not remotely helpful. Dana asked if she died in the room. The landlord hesitated half a beat too long before saying yes. After he left, the whole apartment felt wrong. Not haunted exactly, just rearranged in our minds. Every odd sound now seemed to have a place to attach itself. The heavy door, the key, the hallway outside. That night, we decided to leave the bedroom door open and sleep with the lamp on. It felt childish, but neither of us cared. I woke sometime after 2 because the lamp was off. Not unplugged, not burned out, just switched off. The room was dark except for the weak blue light from the digital clock, and the bedroom door was closed. I knew we had left it open. I knew it. Dana was asleep beside me, breathing unevenly the way she did when she'd been exhausted enough to crash hard. I reached across her, fumbling for the lamp switch, and turned it back on. The light came on immediately. The door stayed closed. I got up and touched it. Locked. From the inside, the key was in the lock. That stopped me cold because I had not put it there. I looked back at Dana, debating whether to wake her, and before I decided, the knob twitched under my hand. Not hard, just a small testing movement from the other side. I stumbled backward. Then came 3 soft knocks. Dana woke instantly and sat straight up. What was that? Before I could answer, 3 more knocks came, gentle, evenly spaced. Dana started crying immediately, silently, tears just spilling down her face as she shook her head over and over. I picked up the lamp from the nightstand because it was the nearest heavy thing and stood there staring at the door like an idiot while my body tried and failed to decide whether to run at it or away from it. Then a woman's voice, old and tired and very close to the wood, said, "Please lock it." The words were so clear and normal that for a second my brain accepted them before the meaning registered. Dana made this awful broken sound and grabbed my arm so hard her nails dug in. The voice came again, lower now. "Don't let it open." Something touched the door from the hallway side. Not a knock this time, a slow drag, like fingernails lightly tracing downward through the paint. Then the knob turned, the key in the lock jerked with it. The latch pulled back. I threw my weight against the door a split second before it opened inward. Whatever was on the other side pushed once, not violently, just enough to let me feel that something had leaned on the door and been answered by my resistance. Dana was off the bed now, helping without me asking, both of us bracing against the wood. The pushing stopped. For maybe 5 seconds there was nothing. Then from the hall, farther away now, came the sound of bare feet moving toward the stairs. Not slippers, not shoes, bare feet on old hardwood. Step, pause, step, pause, descending slowly until the sound disappeared. We did not open the door until sunrise. When we finally did, the hallway was empty. But on the outside of the bedroom door, at about waist height, there were 4 thin scratches in the paint near the knob. And lower down, much lower, around the height of a child's hand, there was a greasy little print, like someone had pressed a palm to the wood. We left that day. Not permanently at first, just enough clothes for a weekend at Dana's sister's place. But once we were out, neither of us wanted to go back unless it was daylight, and both of us were together. We spent the next week packing in short trips. Every time we returned, the bedroom door was closed, every single time. Didn't matter that we left it standing open. Didn't matter that we checked before leaving. We'd come back, and there it would be, shut completely, as if waiting. The last trip was just me. Dana refused, and honestly, I didn't blame her. It was the middle of the afternoon, bright outside, nothing remotely spooky about it, and I still felt sick unlocking the front door. Most of the apartment was empty by then. The rooms echoed. The hallway seemed longer without our furniture. I went into the bedroom, grabbed the last box from the closet, and turned to leave. That's when I noticed the key. It was hanging from the outside of the bedroom door, which made no sense because I was inside the bedroom looking at it. I set the box down very slowly. The key turned by itself. The latch clicked, and the door started to close. Not slam. Close. Slow and steady, as if someone patient on the other side was pulling it until the room and its heavy old door would be sealed together again. I dropped the box and lunged. I got my hand on the edge just before the latch caught. The force on the other side stopped for one horrible second, then pulled harder. The door moved another inch inward despite my full weight against it. In that inch-wide gap, I saw part of the hallway and something low to the ground near the far wall just past the bathroom. Not clearly enough to name it, just pale skin and dark hair, and a shape crouched wrong, folded in a way human joints don't like folding, facing toward the bedroom like it had been waiting for the gap to widen. Then, above me, right by my ear, though no one stood in the room, the same tired woman's voice whispered, "Hold it." I did. I don't remember deciding to. I just planted my feet and pulled with everything I had. The pressure from the other side shuddered once, then released so suddenly, I nearly fell backward. I yanked the door open wide. The hallway was empty, completely empty. I got out of there so fast, I left the box behind. The landlord mailed the security deposit to Dana's sister's address 2 weeks later. In the envelope was a folded note saying we had accidentally left something behind. It was the brass bedroom key. Dana refused to touch it, so I wrapped it in the note and threw it in a gas station trash can 20 miles away. That should be the end of it. Usually when people tell stories like this, they know exactly when the haunting followed them or what object carried it or which moment cursed the rest of their life. I don't have anything that neat. For almost 2 years, nothing happened. We moved into a condo, then eventually into a house. We got older, busier. Life layered over the whole thing like dust over old furniture. We stopped bringing it up unless we'd both had too much to drink, or the power went out and one of us wanted to make the other uncomfortable. Then last winter during a storm, the bedroom door in our current house drifted shut around midnight. No big deal. Houses shift. A few minutes later, Dana asked me from the bathroom why I had locked it. I told her I hadn't. She came to the bedroom doorway with a towel wrapped around her hair, frowning. "It won't open." I got up from bed and tried the knob. Locked. We don't even have a lock on that side of the door. Just a simple privacy latch with no keyhole. Dana went very still. Then, from the other side of the closed bedroom door, from the dark hallway we had both just been standing in, 3 soft knocks landed against the wood. Polite, patient, followed by a woman's tired voice I recognized instantly, speaking from just outside the room. "Lock it properly." The first apartment I ever lived in alone was on the 3rd floor of a building that used to be a hotel. Not a nice old hotel either, the kind that gets described in rental listings as historic because calling it outdated sounds worse. The hallways were too long. The carpets held on to smells no cleaning ever really removed, and every door was made of thick, dark wood with old brass numbers screwed into them like the place still expected guests who'd only be staying one night. My bedroom door was the heaviest door in the apartment. That sounds like a strange thing to notice, but when you live alone, you notice little differences. The bathroom door was hollow and cheap. The closet door stuck in summer. The front door had been replaced sometime in the 90s, but the bedroom door looked original, solid oak. Deep scratches under layers of paint. Old mortise lock replaced by a newer knob that never quite fit the cutout right. It never latched unless I pushed it hard, and once it was shut, it stayed shut. That was the one thing I liked about it. I had moved there after a bad breakup and told everyone I wanted independence, space, a reset, all the normal words people use when they don't want to admit they're mostly trying to outrun how humiliated they feel. I was 26, working late shifts at a pharmacy, sleeping odd hours, and learning very quickly that living alone sounds romantic, right up until the first night you hear a noise and realize there's nobody else in the apartment to blame. So I got routines. I checked the front door lock twice before bed. I left the kitchen light on, and I shut my bedroom door every night. Not because I was scared exactly, but because it made the apartment feel smaller, contained, like whatever was in the rest of the place could stay there, and my room could stay mine. For the first month, nothing happened. Then one Thursday night, I woke up because my bedroom door was opening. Not fast, not dramatic, just slowly widening with that soft wood-on-frame sound old doors make when they move carefully. I sat up immediately. The room was dark except for the orange glow of the streetlight outside, and in that glow I could see the shape of the door easing inward inch by inch. I remember my first thought was stupidly practical. I must not have shut it all the way. That had to be it. The latch hadn't caught. The building settled. Gravity did the rest. Then the door stopped halfway open and stayed there. I waited. Nothing moved in the gap. No shadow crossed the hall. No sound came from the apartment beyond. Just silence and that rectangle of darker darkness where the doorway now stood. I got up, crossed the room, and pulled the door open the rest of the way. The hall outside was empty. Kitchen light still on. Front door still locked. Bathroom empty. Closet empty. I checked every room because that's what you do even when you already know how irrational you're being. Then I came back, shut the bedroom door hard until the latch clicked, and got back into bed. I didn't sleep much after that, but I also didn't think too much of it by morning. Old building, bad latch, done. Except it happened again 2 nights later. This time I was awake when it started. I'd been lying in bed scrolling on my phone, fighting sleep, when I heard the faint metal tick of the latch releasing. I looked up just in time to see the knob shift and the door begin to open by itself. That's the part I still don't like saying out loud, because people hear that phrase and immediately file you away with every other liar or lunatic they've ever met. But I was looking directly at it. The knob moved. The latch pulled back. The door opened. Slowly, smoothly, like a careful hand on the other side knew exactly how much pressure to use. I threw the covers off and reached the door in 2 steps, yanking it open so hard it hit the wall. Nothing outside, no footsteps running away, no prank, no explanation. The hallway was empty and still. The kitchen light was on, and from somewhere far down the building's corridor outside my apartment, I heard an elevator ding. That was it. I called maintenance the next day and made up a story about the latch not catching properly. A guy came by around noon, checked the strike plate, tightened a few screws, sanded the edge where the wood had swollen, and told me the door should be fine now. He was maybe 50, broad-shouldered, with that permanently irritated look building guys sometimes have from spending their lives being blamed for pipes and plaster. When he finished, he asked, "Bedroom door, huh?" I said yes. Then he looked past me into the apartment a little too long before saying, "Try not to leave it open at night." He walked away before I could ask what that meant. I should have asked. That night, I shut the door and wedged a rubber doorstop under it from the inside. Not because I was panicking. Not yet. I just wanted to prove to myself it was a hardware issue. If the door moved again, there'd be a practical reason. At 2:14 a.m., I woke to a steady pressure against the door. Not pounding, not shaking. Pressure. The doorstop was creaking softly against the floorboards like something was leaning on the door from the other side and testing it. My mouth went dry. I sat up in bed without making a sound. The pressure stopped. For maybe 10 seconds there was nothing. Then 3 soft knocks landed on the wood, evenly spaced, gentle enough that if I'd been half asleep, I might have thought I imagined them. I didn't answer. Another 3 knocks. Then a woman's voice, quiet and close, spoke from just outside my bedroom. "Please lock it." I froze so completely that even my breathing hurt. The voice hadn't sounded distorted or ghostly or anything theatrical. It sounded tired, low, almost embarrassed, like someone asking a stranger for help through the wrong hotel room door. I whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. I got out of bed and moved toward the door on shaking legs, stopping a few feet away. I could see the gap of shadow underneath. No feet, no movement. Then the voice came again, fainter this time, as though the speaker had turned her head away. "Before it opens." Every hair on my arm stood up. I backed away so fast I hit the dresser, and then from the other side of the apartment, from somewhere near the kitchen, something laughed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't human either. That was the first moment I stopped trying to explain anything. I didn't open the door until daylight. The doorstop was still jammed under it exactly where I'd put it, but on the outside of the door, at about knee height, there were 4 fresh scratches in the paint, thin, parallel, and deep enough to expose old layers underneath. Maintenance painted over them the next day and told me kids in the building probably did it. There were no kids on my floor. After that, I started asking questions in ways that didn't make me sound insane. Little things. To neighbors, to the girl at the front desk, to the older guy who smoked outside near the dumpsters and seemed to know every rumor the building had ever generated. Most people just shrugged and said the place used to be weird before renovation. One woman in the laundry room told me there had been a fire decades ago on the 3rd floor, back when it was still operating as a weekly stay hotel. She didn't know details, only that one room had been involved and people still argued over whether someone died in it or not. When I asked which room, she said she couldn't remember. I knew before she finished talking. My apartment number was 314. The brass number on my bedroom door, visible under the newer paint if the light hit it right, was also 314. That made no sense in a converted one-bedroom apartment, unless the bedroom had once been the original hotel room. I started sleeping with the bedroom door locked. The new knob had a cheap push-button lock on the inside, useless against anything serious, but it made me feel like I was doing something. For 4 nights, nothing happened. On the 5th night, I woke to the sound of the push-button lock clicking loose. I heard it clearly. That tiny mechanical pop right beside the knob. My eyes opened instantly. The room was dark. The door was still shut. I sat up just in time to see the knob turn. Once, twice. Then the door swung inward 3 inches and stopped. I couldn't move. In the black hallway beyond, something was standing just out of sight. I didn't see a body. I saw absence, a thickness in the dark that made the doorway seem wrong. Then, from right beside my bed, inches from my ear, though no one was there, the tired woman's voice whispered, "Don't let it come in." I screamed, not bravely, not in a horror movie way. I screamed like an animal, grabbed the lamp, and hurled it at the doorway. The bulb exploded. The room went darker. The door slammed shut so hard the walls rattled. I spent the rest of the night sitting in the bathtub with the bathroom light on and a kitchen knife in my hand, listening for movement that never came. The next morning, I went down to the basement office and demanded the building manager tell me what had happened in my apartment. He gave me that look people reserve for the visibly unstable and asked if I wanted to transfer units. I said no. I wanted the truth. Maybe he saw something in my face that convinced him this wasn't a customer service problem anymore, because his whole expression changed. Not sympathetic, just tired. He told me there had indeed been a death in the old hotel room that became my bedroom. A woman in her 30s, long-term resident, lived there alone, had complained repeatedly that someone was trying to get into her room at night. Not break in through the front door, get into the bedroom. Staff thought she was drunk or paranoid or both. This was apparently the sort of hotel where complaints like that didn't lead to much action. One night, another resident reported screaming. By the time anyone used a master key to enter, the woman was dead in bed. No sign of forced entry into the suite. No one in the room. And according to the manager, because by then he'd lowered his voice enough that I knew he regretted speaking at all, the bedroom door was found open. That wasn't the official story, he said. Officially, it was natural causes complicated by smoke inhalation from a space heater incident a few weeks later that damaged records and part of the floor. But among employees, the story that stuck was that she'd spent weeks begging people to fix the bedroom lock because it kept opening on its own. I moved out 2 days later. At least, that was the plan. I packed boxes all afternoon, called in sick to work, and arranged to stay with my sister until I found another place. By sunset, most of my apartment was stripped down to bare furniture and scattered tape rolls. The emptiness made the rooms echo. Every sound I made came back wrong. I saved the bedroom for last because I didn't want to be in there longer than necessary. By around 11, I was done except for the bedding and a duffel bag by the door. I told myself I could stay one final night and leave first thing in the morning with sunlight and coffee and all the ordinary courage daylight gives you, so I made the dumbest choice of my life. I shut the bedroom door, locked it, and got into bed. I think I lasted maybe an hour before sleep finally took me. I woke to the sound of knocking, not on the bedroom door, on the front door of the apartment. 3 soft knocks, then 3 more. I checked my phone, 3:03 a.m. No one saying knocks on an apartment door at that hour unless something is very wrong. I stayed still. The knocking came again. Then a voice from the living room hallway, muffled by distance, called my name. A woman's voice, tired, low, familiar now. Do not open that. I sat up, heart pounding. The knocks at the front door stopped. For a moment, everything was silent. Then I heard the deadbolt on my apartment front door unlock. I heard it. the solid metal thunk of a lock turning by itself from the inside of my own apartment. Then the front door opened, very slowly. Cold air moved through the apartment. I got out of bed and back toward my bedroom door, staring at the dark gap beneath it. I could hear nothing from the living room. No footsteps, no breathing, just the faint, settling creaks of an old building admitting something new. Then, from directly outside my bedroom came a slow drag of something across the wood, downward, like nails. The knob turned. The push lock held for half a second, then clicked loose. I threw my whole weight against the door just as it began to open inward. The force on the other side wasn't violent. That's what terrified me most. It was patient, steady, confident, like something that had opened countless doors and had never once been denied for long. I shoved a dresser against the door with my hip while it kept pressing. The wood trembled. The gap near the hinge widened just enough for cold air to pour in. And from the hall, in a child's voice this time, small and polite and completely wrong, something said, "You forgot." I started crying right there, still pushing. Another voice answered from farther back in the apartment. The woman. Sharper now, urgent for the first time. "Lock it!" I looked wildly around the room, saw nothing useful, then noticed the old brass night latch above the knob. I'd never used it because it barely turned and looked original to the hotel, half painted over and almost decorative. With one hand, I kept my shoulder against the door. With the other, I reached up and twisted it. It moved, stiffly, hard, but it moved. The second it slid into place, something on the other side hit the door once. Not like a person throwing a shoulder into it, more like an entire weight dropping against the wood from too high up. The frame groaned, then silence. A few seconds later, I heard movement retreating through the apartment. Not footsteps exactly, more like many light taps crossing walls, floor, maybe ceiling, all at once and then fading. I stayed there until dawn. When sunlight finally filled the room, I opened the bedroom door. The front apartment door was wide open. The kitchen light was off. The living room rug had a damp trail across it, as if something wet had been dragged from the entrance to my bedroom and then away again. And on the inside of my bedroom door, just above the old brass latch I had used for the first time in my life, someone had written 4 words in the dust with a fingertip. Not that one. I didn't finish packing. I took the duffel bag, my keys, my wallet, and I left everything else behind. My sister helped me replace the furniture over the next few months, and I never went back except once in daylight with 2 friends to collect the last of my things. By then, the building manager acted like he didn't know me. My apartment had already been repainted. The bedroom door had been replaced. Cheap hollow core door, no old brass, no heavy wood, just white paint and a standard lock. I should have felt better. Instead, I felt like I was standing at a crime scene after someone had cleaned it too well. For years, I told myself the woman's voice had tried to help me, that whatever had been in that room, she had known how to keep it out longer than I did. That maybe people can leave behind warnings the same way they leave behind fear. That explanation let me sleep mostly. Then last year, I was staying in a hotel for work in another city. Modern place, card key, 6th floor, nothing old about it. Around 2 in the morning, I woke because someone had softly shut my bedroom door, not the suite entrance, the bedroom door inside the hotel room. I had left it open. Now it was closed. I sat up staring at it, and for a long time nothing happened. Then there was a light knock, 3 taps. And from the other side of that perfectly modern hotel bedroom door, in the same low, tired woman's voice that had once warned me to lock it, I heard her say very clearly, "Don't use the old latch again."